If you're hoping on people in the private sector solving this problem for you because they don't like ESG, I don't think that's enough at all. And talking about this public-private play, it's important to keep in mind that what happens, I mean, just look at this, the Treasury Secretary office alone. So like in Clinton, it was Robert Rubin, Goldman Sachs. He helps repeal Glass-Steagall. And then when that whole bubble pops in 2008, Goldman Sachs' Henry Paulson is Treasury of the Secretary. Then it's Tim Geithner, who worked under Larry Summers, and Robert Rubin is Treasury Secretary under Obama. And then it's Steve Mnuchin, who was involved in the 2008 financial crisis and whose dad was one of the top guys at Goldman Sachs, and he was also Goldman Sachs. So what they do when they're in power is that they create policies that help benefit them. They came from Goldman Sachs with intentions to implement policies that benefit Goldman Sachs. And so generally what happens is that when the private sector wants something, or they've created a big market for something, they've invested lots of money in creating something like the carbon market, and no one's using the carbon market. They are going to then use the public sector to force people to use the carbon market. And so they're trying to do that through the guise of climate emergency, right? And that's not working. So if that's not working, how will they go about and how will they do it? They're trying to go about it the private sector route. Oh, okay, you guys aren't interested in programmable, surveillable money if it's emitted by the central bank. So if it's emitted by a private bank, maybe you will.
Before we dive into today's discussion, let's talk about something critical for every crypto investor. Did you know that SIM swap fraud has skyrocketed by over 300% in the past year? For crypto investors, this can be catastrophic. Imagine waking up to find your crypto wallets drained and your hard-earned investments gone. It's a nightmare, but it's happening every day. Don't let hackers get to your digital assets. Protect yourself with Afani, the world's most secure mobile service. With a $5 million insurance policy and unbeatable protection against SIM swaps, Afani ensures your peace of mind. Plus, if you click the link now, you can get $99 off your next payment on the Afani Safe Plan. Shield your crypto investments and secure your future with Afani today. Don't become another statistic. Act now.
The other side of this is what's happening in places like Argentina right now, where people have lost so much of their purchasing power. So like before Milei came to power, I think the poverty rate was it was insanely high. I think it was something like 60%. And then Milei came into power and devalued the currency by 50%, which led to a massive loss in purchasing power for Argentinians on top of that. Now Argentinians are so desperate and are being told that they're undergoing quote unquote shock therapy designed by a JP Morgan guy, that they're doing WorldCoin. They're scanning their eyes in the Sam Altman orb for shit coins and a cattle tag, a digital ID. And the idea is to have that be like your access to the internet, and using, these tokens and these stable coins, using Tether, using USDC, whatever's supported by Mercado Libre's giant entity, Mercado Pago, which is also integrated with Brazil's biggest crypto exchange, Mercado Bitcoin, and then there's Ripio in the mix, which is partnered with all of these guys too. They're going to control all the rails that stuff runs on. And that's where people are running because their money has been so devalued and they have no alternative. And I think that's ultimately the goal, is to get people on programmable, surveillable money by any means necessary. So if you won't do it because you're like, oh yeah, this is a way I'm going to use JP Morgan coin and beat the Fed CBDC, if you're not going to get suckered into that, then it seems like they'll use destabilization and desperation as a way to get people to onboard into the systems that they're creating. They're not just going to spend billions of dollars creating these systems and have no one use them. They're going to try and use either, desperation created by public sector policies or by private sector policies, and then have, sort of like 2008. Oh, look, the private banks have destroyed the economy. Now we need the public sector to come in and rein them in, even though Obama's cabinet that was supposed to be doing that was literally chosen by Citigroup, right? They're the ones that are going to come in and they're going to rein these in, and these are the policies and changes that need to be made. But actually, it's the bankers that wrote the changes that need to be made. We're likely going to get set up for something like that, where they're going to try and make like existing money worthless. And if you want your money to be worth anything and maintain any sort of semblance of purchasing power, you have to use financial products X, Y, and Z. And they're all
No.
going to be programmable and surveillable, if not by the private sector, by the public sector. And they're all going to be interoperable. They're going to be all these different wallets and digital ID systems that look like they're different companies, but they're all the same, essentially, in terms that they can export all their data to the same central global database. And, that's essentially the goal here. So how do we fight against that? Don't use the database, don't use the digital wallet, don't use the digital ID, don't interact with the system. I think Bitcoin is obviously very key to their plans, but they need Bitcoin to stay, as Larry Fink said, a technology for asset storage. They refuse to have it be a currency. And actually, Jeffrey Epstein gave an interview about Bitcoin that I didn't know about until maybe a couple months ago when we started researching this. Yep. Oh, yes. And he says the exact same thing Larry Fink says. It's not a currency. It's, a technology for asset storage.
There's another very prominent Bitcoiner that likes to roll with that line.
Anyway, basically, if Bitcoin is kept in that box that people like Larry Fink and Jeffrey Epstein and people like them, Larry Summers, presumably, who was on the Zappo advisory board, these guys want Bitcoin to be a specific thing because they can use it. And there's people in the space, like this RSK guy, saying Bitcoin needs to lose its revolutionary ethos. It's got to drop that and become a tool for Wall Street. I think it's pretty obvious what needs to be done to scuttle those plans, which would be ensure the opposite.
Yes, use open source software.
So people need to be putting resources into making that happen. Basically, to recap on that, if they need the Bitcoin blockchain for asset storage, and presumably, if we're right about what's going on in this article, which we seem to be, carbon markets, they need that blockchain. How do we invert their plans and use the Bitcoin blockchain so that it's the tool of financial freedom it was heralded to be, because they can't get rid of it without scuttling their own plans.
No.
Right? So how do we...
Bitcoin is money. It's not digital property.
Use it.
It is digital property, but it is money. And it's hard. Within Bitcoin, there's a lot of hero worship these days. A lot of people get a lot of pushback.
Yes, well, it's not just Bitcoin. I mean, it's everywhere. Yeah. And pretty much most of the heroes are bitches for bankers, whether it's in Bitcoin or in politics. I'm sorry.
Thank you for joining us today on Unscripted Crypto. If you found this discussion valuable, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video. Let's keep the conversation going in the comments below. What are your thoughts on the role of major financial institutions in shaping global policies? How do you think we can best protect our financial freedom? Let us know.